Hi and welcome to this short introduction on integers. So what are integers? An integer is any whole number, any whole number, and whole just means that it is not a fraction or a decimal. So no fractions and no decimals. But they can be positive or negative or zero. Okay, so this is what an integer is. Now, a few examples. An easy way to remember simple integers is that you can count them on your fingers. So something like 3. 3 is an integer. And we said that they can be positive or negative. So if positive 3 is an integer, negative 3 is also an integer. A bigger number might be something like 27. And then negative 27 is also an integer. A few more random examples. Let's say negative 9, 6, and 0. Always remember that 0 is an integer because many people forget that. So if these are integer, then what is not an integer? What is not an integer? So it has to be either a fraction or a decimal for it to be not an integer. So a few examples of that. Half. So a half, like this, is not an integer because it's a fraction. And if you write it like this, it's still not an integer because it's a decimal. And it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. None of these are integers because they're fractions and decimals. And more complicated fractions, still not an integer. It's a 7. And let's say a decimal like this. Again, not an integer because it's a decimal. So this is a general overview of what integers are. And now that we know that, how would we order them? So an easy way to order from smallest to greatest integers is using something called a number line. Number line. And that's just a very big line that has all numbers on it. Has all numbers on it. Okay, so I'm gonna draw one just to show you how it looks. So it's just a line. It doesn't have to be that big. And usually we put a 0 in it and then we put positive and negative numbers around it. So I'll put the 0 here in the middle, and then positive numbers will be on the right and they'll go forward. So we'll call that, it's called increasing. So they'll increase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it goes on and on and on because the number line has all numbers on it, but we don't want to write every single number, so we can put an arrow at the end here to show that this number line keeps going and going. It doesn't finish just at 7. And then on the left hand side we have negative numbers and they go backwards. So on the left they go backwards and we call that decreasing. So it'll be negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, and again these keep going on and on and on forever, and we could just show that by putting a little arrow at the end of the number line. So this is a number line. If it's hard to remember how this works, an example that you could see in everyday life would be a thermometer. So if I was going to draw one here, let's say this is a thermometer. Somewhere on the thermometer it's 0 degrees, and then as it gets warmer it goes to 10 degrees, 20 degrees and higher, and as it gets colder it goes to negative 10, negative 20 and lower. And let's say today it's cold and it's negative 10 degrees outside, so a thermometer would look something like this. This would be our thermometer. Now, notice how the thermometer looks exactly like the number line, except instead of going side to side, it goes up and down. So if you can't remember how a number line looks, just think of a thermometer. It has a 0 somewhere in the middle, and then the negative numbers go on one side of the 0, the positive numbers go on the other side of the 0. And notice that they're mirror images. So if you drew a line right down on the 0, this side would be a mirror image of this side. Okay, so if you are asked to order from smallest to largest, a set of numbers. Now, let's say those numbers are 2, 1, let's say -2 and -3. Now, if you'd want to put them in order, you'd want to look at the number line, start on the left side, and then move toward the right side, because the numbers on the left side are smaller than the numbers on the right side. So, the smallest number here is a -3, and we do find it here. Here's our -3. We put that down, and then as we go to the right, we see we have a -2, and that's one of our numbers, so we'll put it down. -2, and then we keep going until we hit the next number on our list, which is 1, so we could put that down, and then 2 is right beside it, and this is how you order integers from smallest to largest.